Hi, welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Katharine, and in today's video, I'm going to be doing the end of the year freak out book tag. I got this book tag from an idea that I searched online for. It's from Bibliophilia Book Reviews. That's the blog that I got it from. I'll tag it down below so that way you can refer to it yourselves as well. And if you're watching this, consider yourselves tagged for this video because I was not tagged for this video. I simply just searched it online, and since I read the article, the blog post for it, I considered myself tagged. So if you're watching this video, consider yourself tagged. You can share your answers for the questions down below in the comments, or maybe you can even do your own YouTube video on this, or maybe even a blog post on your answers. So just have fun with it. I'm gonna have fun with it, and I hope you enjoy my video for this end of the year freak out book tag. So let's just get into the prompts. So the first prompt is just best books. I'm assuming the best books of the year, and with that I am not hesitating in this answer at all. It's Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon. That is like my all-time favorite book of the year, and that book just like blew me out of the water. It was a 6-star read, and it was something that I will always refer back to as like one of my favorite books of all time. So essentially it's about this girl who is named Naomi, and her family are looking to move out west from Missouri to California, and the only way to get there during that time, during like the 1860s, was on the Oregon Trail. And if you couldn't already tell, this is a historical fiction book. Even though Amy Harmon considers herself a Christian, she doesn't consider her books Christian fiction books, and she doesn't even really consider herself a Christian fiction author, even though she is like a Christian herself, and a lot of her faith inspires her writing and her books. She doesn't consider her books or herself like a Christian author, or her books Christian fiction books, if that makes sense. But I really enjoyed this book. Like I said, it is based in the 1860s, and Naomi and her family are trekking out on the Oregon Trail from Missouri to California, and it's basically just about their journey to California. And it's not just Naomi's family that is going out west on the Oregon Trail. They're like other families that are going out there as well, and they're like all in this one large group together going out there. And there's this man named John Lowry, and John Lowry is half Native American, half white, and him and his uncle are the ones that are leading all of these families out west. So it's essentially about their journey out to California from Missouri, and along the way, John Lowry and Naomi fall in love, and the love story in this is just so wholesome and pure, and I just love this story in general. Like I mentioned, it was a 6-star read for me. Definitely my favorite book of the year, and I will not shut up about it, and I will take no criticism on the book. I will completely ignore any criticism for it. But anyway, I loved that book, and if you haven't read that book, definitely go ahead and read it because it was amazing. Especially if you like historical fiction like I do, definitely read it. The second prompt that is on this book tag is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. And I am not like a huge person when it comes to like keeping up with like new releases and stuff. Like I already have a huge TBR list or to be read list in general. So like I'm not one to like seek out new releases because like I already have like a huge backlist of like what I want to read. So like why am I gonna pay attention to new releases when there's so much already on the list that I already have? But one book in particular that comes to mind that is a release in 2024 and that I want to bring into 2025 of what I want to read. It's a part of like the Timeless series. If you don't know what the Timeless series is, it's a big series and popular series, I should say, on the Christian fiction booktube side of things. And it's essentially this series that follows a girl or a series of girls. So each book in this series follows a different girl, and in each book it follows like the same premise of like each of these girls, like once they turn 21 they have to choose like what time period they want to live in. So growing up until they're 21, it's like basically they're living two separate lives in two separate time periods. And when they're 21, they have to choose like which life they want to be in. And I think that premise is so interesting. I don't know if it's considered time travel because they're not really traveling, if that makes sense. They're just like living two separate lives in two separate time periods. But like, I think the premise is just super interesting. I do know that there is a fourth book that just came out in 2024, like I mentioned, not 2025. In 2024 it just released. So let me see what that book is. So this series is by Gabrielle Meyer, if you're not familiar. And the first book in the series is called When the Day Comes. The second book is In This Moment. The third book is For a Lifetime. And the fourth book that just came out in 2024 is called Across the Ages. I haven't read any of these books before. I do have the first and second book on my bookshelf, like on my physical bookshelf, if that makes sense. And like I mentioned, the first two books are When the Day Comes, and the second book is In This Moment. So I definitely want to read like the series first before I get to the fourth one that was just released in 2024. Like I mentioned, the fourth one is called Across the Ages, and I've heard like nothing but good things about this series, and I just can't wait to get to it. So for that prompt of like new releases that I need to get to, it would be like just the Timeless series in general, but specifically that fourth book because it was just released in 2024. And then the third prompt is my most anticipated book for early 2025. So I don't know if this means like a new release that I'm anticipating, but I'm not going to take it as that because like I mentioned, I don't really keep track of like new releases and stuff, but like an anticipated read that I want to read in early 2025 is the Mark of the Lion series by Francine Rivers. I've had it on my physical bookshelves, on my like physical TBR or to be read list for a few years now, and Francine Rivers, if you didn't know, is like one of my favorite authors of all time, and I want to read her Mark of the Lion trilogy. So that's probably my most anticipated read of early 2025 because I do want to read that in the first months of the year. So number 4, what is your biggest disappointments of 2024, like the books that I read in 2024? And I would probably have to say like a lot of the mainstream books that were suggested to me on like secular booktube and bookstagram and book talk and stuff. I started off the year like kind of reading like a lot of Colleen Hoover books, like Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, Christina Lauren books, and I just was really disappointed with all of them. And so I probably would have to say Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and third would probably have to be Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. And for those who don't know, like I just made like a huge major switch from reading like mainstream secular fiction to like Christian fiction, and I've been following a lot of like Christian booktubers and bookstagrammers and book talkers recently, and have unfollowed and like unsubscribed from a lot of just like the mainstream secular booktube and book talk and bookstagrammers because like I just haven't found anything that I liked from there, and like since I am a Christian I just felt really convicted over that. And so I'm hoping that like as I make my way through Christian fiction books that I find some great books that I enjoy. And then number 5, biggest surprises. So books that surprised me this year would probably have to be like the book by Amy Harmon that I mentioned, Where the Lost Wander. Like I had never heard of Amy Harmon before, and I just like really enjoyed her book. Like I said, it was a 6-star read for me, and I can't wait to get to the rest of her backlist in terms of like her other books and things like that. So that was my biggest surprise of the year. I actually read it for a book club that I was invited to. So like I would have never known about Amy Harmon or Where the Lost Wander if I wasn't invited to that group. So I'm like super thankful that I was invited to that book club. That way I discovered possibly one of my favorite authors. I don't know if she's like my favorite author yet, because I do have to read a few of her books in order for me to consider her my favorite author, because I feel like it's not right for me to call her my favorite author until I read at least like 2 or 3 of her books. I just read one of her books so far, so let's see if in 2025 I read more of her books and I can maybe consider her my favorite author. Oh, the next prompt is new favorite authors. So I guess for the sake of this prompt, I'm going to say Amy Harmon, just because the one book that I did read by her this year like just blew me out of the water. But I'm hoping, like I mentioned before, in 2025 that I can read more of her books so that I can like truly call her a new favorite author. Okay, so 7, newest fictional crush. So I don't tend to have fictional crushes, but if I were to like theoretically, like I said, have a crush on a book character, I would have to say Ron Weasley from Harry Potter. I did read some Harry Potter books this year, and I actually finished the Harry Potter series, and I always growing up had a huge childhood crush on Ron Weasley from the Harry Potter movies. So I'm gonna say that just because growing up I loved Ron Weasley and I'm gonna stick true to that. Number 8, newest favorite characters. So like I just mentioned, I finished the Harry Potter series this year, and after reading the Harry Potter series in completion, I just have come to appreciate all of the characters in the Harry Potter series. There's like not one person or character in particular that I love, but just like all of them are so great. I just felt like really connected to all the characters, and I am really sad that the journey is now over of reading them, but I guess I could always reread them and like watch the movies too to like get bits and pieces of like my favorite characters. But I would probably have to say like the Harry Potter characters from the Harry Potter books and movies. Books that made you cry. I honestly don't have an answer for this because I don't normally cry during books and during movies in general. Like I am an emotional person like in my everyday life. I cry almost every single day just based on things that go on in my life. I cry when I'm happy, I cry when I'm sad, I cry when I'm hungry, I cry when, I just look at my daughter Lucy. She's my cat. I cry when I just look at her because she's so cute. But anyway, I don't really cry during books or movies in general. So I technically don't really have an answer for this because I never really like truly like cried during any of the books that I read this year. But I did tear up while I was reading The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. At the end, if you know, if you know the ending of The Book Thief, the ending is so sad, and I did tear up a little bit, but I didn't like full on cry, if you know what I mean. So I guess that could be my answer, but like I didn't full out cry during any of the books that I read. Just like a little bit teary-eyed. The next prompt is a book that makes you happy, and I would have to say A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I read it for the first time this year. I, of course, have watched a lot of movie adaptations to the book, but I never read the actual book, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, before, so I read it for the first time in 2024. So I just really loved that book though, because like it just has a great message and it really made me happy and it inspired me to not be such a Scrooge in my everyday life, because I tend to be more on the negative side and look at the downs, but it just inspired me and made me happy and encouraged me to look on the bright side of things. And then the next prompt is a beautiful book that I read, and I would probably have to say The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Even though there were some like things that I did not like about the book, it was a beautiful book in general, and it really made me appreciate like magical realism in books and like just having historical aspects in books, and it really made me have hope in books, because at that point when I was reading it, I was really discouraged about like the mainstream books that I was reading, and I just was really discouraged. But this book, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, kind of inspired me to, you know, read Christian fiction and like historical fiction, because I know that's what I like. So I really loved the historical and magical realism aspects of the book, and just the way that V.E. Schwab like described the scenery, and just the way that she wrote. It was just a beautiful book, even though, like I mentioned, it wasn't like my favorite book of all time, and there were definitely some things in it that I didn't agree with. I still appreciate the book for what it is, and it was just overall a beautiful book. And then the last prompt for this book tag is a book that I need to finish. So at the time of filming this and also uploading this onto YouTube, it's still December, so I have to finish my December TBR. There are a few Christmas books that I need to finish and some other books that I need to finish. I'm not being too hard on myself. If I don't get to all these books like that, that's not going to be a problem, and like I'm not going to beat myself up over it, but I would love to finish like my December TBR or to be read list. But yeah, I don't want to mention that now because I don't want to spoil any of the books that I'm reading for December before I post my December reading wrap up, but just know that I do still have to finish some of the books on my December TBR or to be read list. I'll tag that video down below so that you can see what books I'm planning on reading this month, and that way you get a better idea of like what books I need to read for the month of December. But yeah, that's the end of this book tag. Thank you so much for watching it. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. Do all the YouTube things that you know how to do, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!